Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at Panasonic S1 II. Last year's introduction of partially stacked sensors has basically created a new category of cameras that sits somewhere between entry-level full-frame cameras and low-resolution flagships with fully stacked sensor. Panasonic is now entering this category with the S1 II, but as I will explain, it also kind of creates another subcategory of its own. It promises pretty incredible speed and amazing video specifications, but without the full price of a fully stacked sensor. In this video, we will take a look at how that sensor performs in the S1 II, at the autofocus, video specifications, and I will try to explain all that you need to know about the S1 II. As always, let's start with the exterior, which is indeed identical to the S1R2, and that is the best possible option in my opinion. It is just 13.4 cm wide and it weighs about 780 grams including the battery, so it is very compact, especially when we consider what it can do. We can also use the S5 II for reference, which is almost the same size except for higher dry mode dial, which accommodates the still/video switch, and extra 3mm added by the tilting and rotating screen mechanism. The build quality is excellent as usual. It uses a full magnesium frame including the backside, very durable plastics, and most of the front side is rubberized with a very nice texture. The S1 II is fully weather sealed just like the S1R2, and that weather sealing was very thoroughly tested at the launch event of the S1R2, which took place above the Arctic Circle. The S1 II is pretty much built around the new sensor, so let's take a look at that. It is a 24 megapixel backside illuminated, partially stacked sensor with very high readout speed. It uses similar technology to the Z6 III sensor, but apparently it is not the same sensor. The one in the S1 II is probably a lot faster. 24 megapixel resolution is still fine for intended purposes, it keeps down the amount of data that needs to be processed, and it is a logical choice for the speed and video specifications that Lumix was aiming for. Regarding the dynamic range and ISO, unfortunately the RAWs are not compatible with any editing software yet, so that will remain a mystery for now. There is some dynamic range penalty with a semi-stacked sensor in the Z6 III, which may or may not be the case with the S1 II, but there are some indications that the S1 II will perform better. The S1 II may not be the first choice for fine art landscapes, that is the S1R2's job, but more importantly the performance for sports and wildlife as well as for video should not be compromised. The S1 II is the first Panasonic camera that can shoot HEIF or HEIF in addition to JPEG, which is great, because that is a much more efficient format compatible with pretty much all modern devices, so that is a very welcome upgrade. Regarding that readout speed, the S1 II can shoot 60 frames per second using electronic shutter with no penalties, so 14-bit RAW with continuous autofocus and no blackout. If you are fine with 12-bit RAWs, you can get 70 frames per second. That is 3 times as much as the Z6 III, and frankly incredible number at this price point. I have tested it in a lot of situations with objects moving across the frame and I haven't seen any issues with rolling shutter. Theoretically, there may be some skewed lines visible when shooting golf, so just choose something more interesting to shoot. You can also get 10 frames per second with mechanical shutter and therefore no rolling shutter, but I don't think that there is much of a point in using mechanical shutter with the S1 II. The buffer can take 180 RAWs, which is 3 seconds at 60 frames per second. That should be enough, especially with the option to use pre-burst. You can also get pretty much infinite buffer at lower frame rates. The buffer clearing is pretty slow, but you can use the camera during the clearing, except for the playback of the burst that is being cleared. The S1 II has one CFexpress Type B slot and one SD card slot. If you want to take full advantage of the S1 II's speed, you will need to use that CFexpress slot. The S1 II can also use external SSD storage, which is a great option, and a novelty is an option to copy or backup files from your memory card to SSD directly in camera. Especially if you only use the CFexpress slot to get the full speed, it is great to be able to backup your files this way. Regarding the autofocus, the S1 II still uses a hybrid system with 779 phase detection points and DFD-based contrast system, much like the S1R2. The difference is that the sensor readout speed is much higher, so it should be able to keep up with the continuous shooting speed, and it is. I was able to get 100% hit rate at 60 frames per second in various situations, including basically indoor sports. It also performs great with objects moving towards the camera, even with long focal lengths. The usual situations such as close distance to infinity refocusing are obviously not an issue at all. It also works great in low light and strong backlight. So far, the autofocus was able to deal with all of my tests, so I am very happy with the autofocus system. Panasonic's hybrid video autofocus has been great for a while, and the S1 II is not an exception. It can deal with all of my testing scenes in all conditions. There are some new subject detection settings which work great as well. As I've explained in my previous Lumix reviews, this autofocus system is actually the best when it comes to figuring out what it should actually focus on. For example, cameras from other brands, including Sony, often focus on my little finger in this test, but Panasonic always correctly focuses on the camera, so I am very happy with that aspect of the video autofocus performance. The other major highlight of the S1 II are video capabilities, so let's take a look at those. As expected, it shoots fully downsampled 4K, 6K and 6K open gate. More importantly, it can shoot 5.9K 60p with no crop. It can also shoot OpenGate 3x2 5.1K 60p with no crop. 4K 120p has 1.24 times crop, which is in my opinion very acceptable at this price point. 4K 60p is completely without the crop as well, and it can do so in 10-bit 422 long GOP or all intra. When it comes to ProRes, it can do up to 5.8K ProRes 422 HQ at 1.9 gigabits per second, or ProRes RAW HQ at 4.2 gigabits per second. The list of video resolutions, frame rates and codecs is pages long, so I won't read all of it here, but it is pretty safe to say that this is by far the most capable video DSLM under $4,000 or euros on the market. It is pretty amazing how affordable are things such as 5.8K ProRes nowadays. The video quality itself is excellent as expected from fully downsampled video with plenty of detail. There is not much to talk about there anymore. More interesting is the dynamic range. Much like the S1R2, the S1 II has a dynamic range boost function for lock, which is some kind of real-time processing that increases the dynamic range, but here it goes up to 15 stops, which is pretty incredible. The amount of dynamic range that you can extract from this footage in combination with ProRes or even with normal MOV footage is pretty amazing. Dual native ISO is available as well, of course, and it is ISO 6400 and 5000 for lock. Native ISO values is a frequently asked question, so here you can read the ISO values for various picture styles. One of my favorite additions to the new S1 line is the Cine-like A2. I'm a big fan of semi-flat Cine-like picture styles, and the A2 offers a great compromise between the cinematic look, flexibility and ease of color corrections, so I definitely recommend giving it a go. It will also be possible to get ARRI C3 with a software key later on. The rolling shutter with dynamic range boost off is excellent. I don't know what are the numbers, but it won't be an issue in 99.9% of reasonable scenarios. With dynamic range boost on, it seems to be similar to non-stacked 24 megapixel cameras such as the S5 II, which is completely fine by me. Much like all second generation Lumix S cameras, the S1 II has an active cooling system in the viewfinder housing. The overheating resistance will greatly depend on the video settings and even more on the recording media. In my testing, I was able to drain the whole battery at 6K 25p with CFexpress card. I was only able to make it overheat in 4K 120p with CFexpress card after about 40 minutes, which is definitely not a typical use case scenario. Also, when you are using battery grip, SSD recording or SD card, it will run pretty much with no limits, so the overheating resistance is excellent. All of the advanced stuff such as anamorphic modes, false colors, 32-bit float audio and so on is available, but I will talk about that in an extended review later on. The in-body image stabilization is carried over from the S1R2 and it is excellent. It is rated for 8 stops, which means that it is among the best Panasonic cameras on paper and also in reality. With stills, fully sharp 1-second exposures at 24mm are pretty easy task, 24-megapixel sensor is more forgiving, so you can go even beyond that. In video, I have tried in-body image stabilization only at 70mm and it is the most stable full-frame 70mm footage that I got so far. Despite that the in-body image stabilization is really strong, the behavior is very predictable. Wider focal lengths are just extremely stable, so much like with the R version, I am more than happy with the in-body image stabilization. I will also mention the cropless electronic image stabilization here again, because it completely fixes warping in the corners that are visible at ultra-wide angles with the most effective in-body image stabilization systems, such as this one. It is an extremely impressive technology and it works extremely well. It seems that it uses lens profile corrections to get the extra space for the electronic stabilization, but I am not quite sure how it works. The bottom line is that it fixes the warping completely, so huge thumbs up. Overall, the stabilization is excellent. The handling is identical to the S1R2, which is great because, as I've explained, these are the only two cameras that I've ever tested with a handling that is for me personally 100% perfect. The body is very compact, the grip is very well shaped, deep enough, and there is enough space for fingers even with thicker lenses. The front side is rubberized and the strap mounts are integrated in the frame, so there is nothing to poke me in the hand. It has 3 command dials, a dry mode dial, joystick, dedicated autofocus mode switch, plenty of customizable buttons, including the new one on the front side, and focus area button. All second generation S1 cameras have proper stills and video mode separation, which was the final element that completed the perfect handling for me personally. I would also say that it is the best implementation with user-friendly options to customize which settings are carried over between the modes and which settings will be separated. Again, if I was designing a camera body, this is exactly how I would have done it. The user interface is the same as with older Lumix S cameras, but in the S1 II and S1R II it is a lot faster. Otherwise, it is the same very well organized menu with items that are large enough for use with a touchscreen. I also got used to the Q menu with a smaller preview window, but I would still like the full screen option from old Panasonic cameras. The electronic viewfinder uses a well-known 5.76 million EVF with 0.78 times magnification. It is a very good EVF, very detailed and more than sufficiently bright. It is a visible improvement over the 3.69 million EVF in the S5 II. Panasonic basically uses the same display on all new DSLMs, including the S1 II, and it uses a 3-inch panel with 1.84 million dots. Whilst there are more impressive displays out there, this one is still really good, the resolution is completely sufficient, and so is the brightness. Fortunately, the S1 II uses a hybrid display mount which can be both tilted and rotated. The mechanism only adds about 3mm to the overall thickness, so I am indeed happy with this solution and I think that everybody should be happy now. The Flow app is one of my favorite new Lumix features and it works with the S1 II, but I wasn't able to make the beta version work yet for some reason. Nevertheless, there are some significant updates to the app. Now it can also work over the Wi-Fi and there will be an iPad version and I'm really looking forward to that. Just to recap what it does, it basically turns your smartphone into an external display using USB-C cable, the lag is negligible and you can even control some functions of the camera using the touchscreen on your smartphone. This one too uses the BLK22 batteries, again much like all current Lumix S cameras. The CPA rating is around 350 shots, but the real-world numbers will greatly depend on the type of use. When taking stills, you will get similar battery life as with the S5 II for example, so it should be enough for a day of travel photography. 60 FPS burst, ProRes or 4K 100p will drain the battery rather quickly. Still, I was able to get 150 minutes of 4K 25p, which is pretty good. I also got the new BG2E battery grip, which doubles the battery life, improves the ergonomy and so on. By the way, the sales of battery grips have plummeted over the past couple of years, which makes me a bit sad, so I will probably make a separate review of this battery grip. Panasonic has also announced the new 24-60mm f2.8 lens, which is very compact and optically really good, but I will tell you more about that in a separate review. Regarding the comparison with the Z6 III, despite that they use similar sensor technology, they are not direct competitors. The S1 II is 3 times faster and it has much more advanced video features, but it is also more expensive. I will still make a comparison once the S1 II RAWs will be compatible with Lightroom. I also think that the S1 II may help take some pressure off the S1R2 because the S1R2 is currently being compared to everything from Z6 III to A1 II, which makes no sense, so it is great for Panasonic that the S1 II will cover another significant part of the market. To sum up, I think that the S1 II could be the camera that will make a big part of the Lumix community happy. It should also allow Panasonic to target new customers, mainly users who shoot a lot of fast action, sports and wildlife. Importantly for Panasonic, it is also the most advanced video DSLM under 4,000 euros by a significant margin. I still need to examine the RAWs before I can give you the final verdict, but it seems to be a very capable package. 60 FPS 14-bit RAW is a very interesting proposition for sports and wildlife. Importantly, the autofocus can match that kind of speed. The video specifications, including no crop 4K 60p, open gate or 5.8K ProRes RAW, go deep into serious filmmaking territory, especially in combination with 15 stops of dynamic range. The in-body image stabilization is excellent, so is the video autofocus, and as I've explained, the handling is perfect for me personally. Some of the new features, such as Lumix Flow App, an option to backup files to SSD, or the XLR2 helmet are also worth mentioning. The battery life could be better, but the consumption is justified by that powerful hardware. Other than that, there isn't really anything that I can outright criticize. As long as the RAW files will prove to be solid, I think that this could be a winning package for Lumix. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.